Existence. We never seem to doubt our existence. We all know that we're here, wherever this is, wherever this planet is, in whatever universe this is, in whatever galaxy this Earth and its universe belong to. And in this existence, we have many people talk about God. And God has been something that we have created. And people say that it's something that created us. So God is everything. Everything is God. And therefore, you and I are gods. Which means we have the potential to create our own existence, to control our existence. And our existence was given a mind and a body. We were born, and long before we can ever remember what we first encountered, when we were conceived and when we were born into this world, our world consists of our mind and our body and our thoughts and emotions. And we experience everything else through our senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Whatever we are, this is all we have. Oh, we also have our ego. Our ego is really our mind collecting all of the things that we sense in this world. And it begins to associate memories with a self-identity. Our mother called us by a name. Somebody complimented us on when we wore a certain color. Somebody sneered and snickered when we told a joke. And so we slowly become the person we are as the ego latches on to things that define ourselves. Not to ourselves, but to everybody else in the world that we live in. And our experience is a collection of sensations that occur. They are entangled into our memories. For many, sight and sound are the main facets of these experiences. Of course, we have all our senses, but most of our memories are triggered and collected, cataloged by the sight and sound of the events of those experiences. Oftentimes, physical touch, violence, and other aspects of our physicality are strong facets connected in those memories as well. And we usually call those trauma. So all these familiar sights and sounds and even smells can trigger a memory. And those memories are normally labeled by our mind in duality. Something is good or it's bad, it's strong or it's weak, it's soothing or frightening. We catalog our experiences and collect them over time, and we label them in duality. Our language is a label of everything, to everything. We use language to communicate. And so when we say God, it is a label, as is the religion that we may use to try and find God, to try and pray to God, or whatever else that you want to do with God. But the irony is, aren't we supposed to all be God? God is everything, everything is God. So maybe that doesn't make sense. Let's take a look at that later. The label only needs to exist in the mind. Labels don't exist anywhere else. We created labels in order to communicate them with others, in order to identify and catalog them within our experience, in order to map those for ourselves. It's a programming in order to survive so that we can sustain our life in all means possible. If we have a bad experience, we think it might be life threatening, we are going to remember it so that we don't do it again or that we can avoid it. We're learning. It's the condition of the mind to find meaning and importance in order to better survive. Expressing anything, concepts or ideas or our experiences, take place within the illusion of time. The illusion of time? That's right. Time is an illusion. Time does not exist outside of our minds. I cannot go back to the past. I cannot be in the future. I can only be in this moment right now. And so if I'm in this moment right now, this moment, not the one that just passed, not the one that's about to come, but this moment is the only moment I have. It's the moment I'm talking right now. There is no other moment. And so time does not exist. It's something we've labeled. We have a memory, and so that memory labels it as something that's happened in the past. Our minds contemplate experiences and associates labels with them for the purposes of survival. Our memory usually tells us something is not real and only a memory. And hence we say we acknowledge that it's in the past. Well, this is very important. We know it's a memory. I know what I said 5 minutes ago. I didn't just say it now. I'm not saying it at this moment. I said it in the past. And so I can decipher between what is being experienced at this moment versus what I had experienced in the past. And that is a construct of the mind that has labeled an experience, and we've placed it and labeled it in the past. Learning from the past allows our minds to prepare and anticipate an experience to enhance our survival. Our minds contemplate it as the future. That happened yesterday, and I almost fell into the river and drowned. Today, I'll be more careful walking near the bank of the river so I don't fall in. We react to future events to create a better outcome for our chances of survival. The future is a concept that we created in order to anticipate events and prevent us from having bad outcomes. We want to survive the next time we get near the river. We don't want to fall in and drown like my friend did, who was standing beside me a little bit closer to the edge than I was. And so we learn, and we've created a future so that our memory can project into the future. Our minds can look at a memory and say, in the future, if this occurs again, if I find myself in the present moment in these circumstances again, or with these things that are leading up to a circumstance I expect to happen. You see, it's all a mind that is calculating, that is projecting what the future may bring. And it's a survival technique. And so, time, the construct of time, the idea of time existing, only works in the mind. There's no proof that anything can visit the past or that the future is happening that we can arrive at in this moment other than having to wait for it. The good, the bad, the heaven, the evil, duality is created by the mind under judgment. We labeled all these things in order to be able to sort them out and figure out what's good for us, what's bad for us, what's going to help our survival, what's not going to be good for our survival. Again, it's labeling. But it doesn't make for objective reality. Simply saying something is bad or saying something is good, labeling it as such, does not make it so. What is, and that is all. There is no not is, anything opposite to what is. So if you think that something is good, that means there can be nothing that's bad. Because we only have this moment. There is no time. And so it's good. But then if there's no bad, what's so great about being good? It just is what it is. And in fact, many people's heaven is another person's hell. I'm sure we can all relate to this idea. And so this is what I mean by objective reality. What I may find good and bad may not be what you have labeled good and bad. We all have our collective experience, and we all have our projected intuition into the future of what we want to happen for ourselves. And so we label things good, bad, heavenly, or evil based on them. And yes, we have a collective moral compass that I believe is the remnants of our true essence, in fact, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So our mind and body. So if we're trapped in this idea of labeling things good and bad and heavenly and evil, and we're suffering from the idea that these things are happening to us, or our lives are not as we would like them to be, are suffering. In other words, our mind and its ego begin to collect these experiences into memory, labeling them and projecting them. And they form our identity. We grow preferences from foods we like to the environments we prefer to linger within. and other egos we tolerate or are attracted to. We become social. So our body has a brain, and that brain produces our emotions through chemical release that is interpreted by the mind. Our body, our brain creates memories. And so who we are, our ego, becomes the mind. We've identified ourselves with all of these things that have been labeled over time with our experiences, and our brain has created memories, and these memories are selected, our preference, and part of our ego will stand by these things. That's why people behave differently in different situations, because their ego has driven them to be a certain kind of person. But more importantly, our mind and body are inseparable to us. We Our mind seems to be in control, and our ego is this silent partner confirming or whispering to us what's okay or not okay. And if we build a society that creates an overabundance of certain types of experiences for everybody in that society, our egos will become more or less biased and enhanced in these situations. So our egos tend to start to become familiar with each other. We might even say they become cultural. I want to talk a little bit about energy because, again, we tend to label certain things in certain ways, and because I know there's many people struggling with spirituality and separating from the ego and bringing an end to our suffering in this world. And energy, or the label of energy, um, is something that keeps coming up, and I just wanted to give you my view on it. Energy as a force. Our senses can feel energy in different ways. There's heat, there's sound energy, light, touch, whether it be gravity or with us falling on the ground, or kinetic energy, somebody touching us, or so it takes a force in order for us to feel something, because if we're not touching anything, if you won't feel it. But some energy is for the most part unexplainable, and I'm calling it intuitive energy. It allows us to identify situations that have a connotation of something favorable or adversarial. Um, you know, it's sort of that, a person gives us a kind of vibe. We can't really pinpoint what it is about them, but as we interact with them, we get a sense that we either really, really like them or we don't. And we can even feel that they are being hostile towards us. It's not even, it becomes almost like they're intentionally becoming hostile to us. And in some ways, any one of these situations that come up where we feel this way, we may be justified or not. It's hard to say. But what I wanted to talk about is energy, regardless of how we categorize it, quantify it. Um, we know that energy um, has a frequency. Science has determined that all energy and particles of mass that create matter are in fact waves. And waves, by definition, have a frequency. And frequencies resonate with others to increase or diminish the force they have and create additional waves called harmonics. And so the idea that a person's energy, their energy when they're near you, and whether it's them talking or them moving or just being present, any combination of things will give off an energy, will give off a frequency, and that frequency will resonate with your energy. And those energies may feel like they're increasing or they're decreasing your force. And you may be interpreting that as this person is giving me bad vibes. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling sick. I don't feel good when this person is near me. And in this sense, I would tend to agree that what you're experiencing is real, although it's not a typical way for ourselves to express it. Yes, people have talked, yeah, that this person has a really high frequency or a low frequency, and I don't think it's about trying to label it as high or low, but it is about whether or not the person's resonating in a positive or negative way, meaning diminishing your energy force or enhancing it. And I think that can be real. Harmonics, I think, is also something that we could explore more in meditation to understand how that is. And also, I think this whole subject could be explored in I would say, a quasi-scientific method where we could do it in groups, and we may not even have to be physically near each other, which is very interesting as well. So this whole idea of spiritual energy or chakras within our bodies, our bodies, again, our brains produce and react to energy frequencies, and our minds label everything. So since we know that our minds are in the habit of labeling everything to sort and collect data into memory, when we refer to spiritual energy or chakras, we can agree that they are correct in our view. That the label given by our minds as we know it is purely subjective and has no objective basis in reality. And what I mean by that is, again, I think some may say, "Oh, well, I have a high frequency. I'm on a higher plane, and this person's low, and they're dragging me down." That's not an objective basis in reality. It's a subjective point of view. It doesn't give any less meaning or importance to these feelings, and only through acknowledgement that they are real and they impact the mind's reaction is what's important. And if your mind becomes preoccupied with these energies, you could feel helpless to avoid or change them. So you've sort of created your own crisis in this sense. And I think, again, it's coming back to the fact that what is, and that's all that is. So trying to define, label something as good, bad, making me down, making me feel great, has all of the trappings of our world in suffering. One could simply just extrapolate the idea that a certain drug feels great, and so we get addicted, and that brings us down. So we've created our own crisis in trying to follow what may feel good or may feel bad, and so on and so forth. These are trappings of the world. And again, this is the idea that has no objective basis in reality when we try and label and judge these things as being good for us or being bad for us and so on. Um, the other one is karma. And karma is something that's, again, a label that was, from everything I've come to understand, it's something that was used by gurus to explain various situations in the world that we come across. Action, reaction, a concept created by the mind. Many believe it defines that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people, and there's a lot of discussion about karma, and it gets extrapolated into the whole idea of life beyond our body and this world here now. If we die and we do reincarnate, or our essence of life, our essence of everything we are other than our physicality, continues on afterwards, that karma comes with us. And if we come back and are reborn into another body, that we have karma from other lives. I think a lot of all of that, again, has no objective basis in reality. It it may have subjective basis in reality for those who have experienced it, um, but I'm quickly going to go out of my depth on that one. Um, but again, if I simplify the whole subject down to a label, down to subjective versus objective reality, if I stay in the present moment and ignore anything that has to do with the past or present, karma, by definition, works in the idea of past and present. And again, so this is why I can acknowledge what the teachings are trying to accomplish, but I believe they're going in the wrong direction, even bringing up this concept. Yin and yang is another one where we're placing virtuous value on actions and creates a grand accounting of everything. Um, if you did something good, there's something bad hanging around, the next corner, and if we believe the universe will remain in balance, then your good actions are always countered by bad actions. So here, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? Are we trying to balance the entire universe through our actions? In a mental state, I think for me, if I feel I'm out of balance, out of center, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I get to how I get there. But when I find myself trapped in the idea that things are happening to me or that are good or bad, and that I try not to place too much weight and emphasis and emotional investment in them. Many people kind of take that as being almost, I don't know, maybe aloof. I can walk on a beautiful day and not have to say a word if I happen to even be with somebody. I don't need to recite the idea that it's a beautiful day and I can hear the birds and this is a wonderful life I'm living. I actually experience it, but I don't feel a need to express it as a positive thing. I don't need to reinforce it and through labeling it in language as anything. I can simply experience it, and in that sense, be happy with my experience. Just be happy with experiencing anything. Um, but again, since we know that our minds are in the habit of labeling everything to sort of collate data into memory, when people refer to yin and yang or karma, it's a sort of moral balancing act that they're looking at, from what I can gather. And again, I try to not place too much try not to place too much weight in the subject for achieving what I think we're all after, which is the end of suffering in this life. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more as we go about how I got there. And so these are some of the high level concepts that allowed me to get there. So I talked a little bit about our egos, our minds and bodies, the brain, and the idea of labeling everything, including time, as everything in our world is something that our mind has created. Including the idea of energy forces acting on us in good or bad ways. And as I mentioned, karma, yin and yang, sort of a moral accounting of everything that's going on in our lives. But I knew from a very early age, and I can't specifically remember why I knew it. There are a couple of instances where, and I believe this is one of them, is the concept of time rang true to me that it didn't exist, although previously in my life I hadn't had much time to contemplate the idea that time does not actually exist and that it's only a construct. As soon as those thoughts or that idea had been expressed to me, and I can't remember which it was, I knew it was right. And it's only recently in the last several years that I gained a stronger belief in it. And I have to use the word belief carefully, and I'll explain that in a little bit as well. So the idea that time does not exist, we only have this moment, there is no good or bad, there's no past or present, duality of the world does not exist, it's a construct of our minds. And we understand the purpose of all those constructs is in order for us to survive as a species, as a life force within this body, within this world, on this planet, in this galaxy, within this universe. This is the game, if we can call it. These are the rules of the game. However, we all get this sense that there's more to it than that. Remember, we said God was everything, and everything was God, which includes us, which makes us gods. So if we're gods, why are we subject to all this suffering in this body, in this world, for everything that happens to us? Well, I came across a mantra that was introduced to me called, I am not this body, I am not this mind. And it was explained in a very elegant way, and it took a little bit for it to be expressed completely, but And I'll share who gave me this is, but becoming overwhelmed by our thoughts, our emotions, and energy, whether we feel they're from others or not, is a problem for a lot of people. And, becoming overwhelmed with our thoughts and energies and emotions, it is our source of our suffering. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about a tree falling on us and breaking our leg. Clearly, that would be suffering. You're going to feel pain. But in fact, um, for another story, pain is subjective as well. But we won't go in there yet. Let's take a look at where I got this. I am not this body. I am not this mind. It's a mantra I was told to use every night, and the first thing I did when I wake up. And it was offered to me to contemplate by Sadhguru. Now, Sadhguru has a inner engineering course, which I also did take, and I learned the concept, the idea that we are not our bodies, we are not our minds, And through the course offering at the Isha Foundation called Inner Engineering, I have come to accept this concept. And in order to do this, if I separate from my body and I separate from my mind, what's left? Only me. But separating means giving distance, means our ability to step back from what we consider ourselves. Remember, I told you at the very beginning, we very early on created an ego and self-identity that was a collection of experiences and memories. And over time, we grew into things that we prefer, and they created our personality. And that personality is embedded within our ego, and our ego whispers to us about things that we should or shouldn't do, and people we should and shouldn't associate with, and it's a whole lot of things. And in a lot of cases, it is this connection to the mind that creates our own suffering. And so if we can separate from our mind, we can separate from the suffering. We can observe the mind doing what it's doing and separate from that suffering. Now, I believe it was Sadhguru, but however, it might have been the next person I'll introduce you to, but I believe it was Sadhguru who gave a guided meditation and produced the following concept to enhance our acceptance of I am not this body, I am not this mind. Imagine you're sitting on the bank of a river, so you can take up whatever pose or stance you like in order for you to meditate. And as you're meditating, I want you to imagine yourself sitting on the quiet bank of a river, and you can hear the water gently flowing past. And you can see the water coming towards you down the river, and as it goes by, floating off into the distance and around the bend. And so now I want you to think about the water in the river as your thoughts and emotions that occur to you during meditation. Now, we've all been, I think, given the sense or the idea that meditation is to be able to not think at all, to not feel at all, just to simply be. And that most people find it very hard to do. That, if I tell you not to think, if I tell you not to think about pizza, the first thing you're going to do is think about pizza forever. So the whole concept of trying to meditate where you feel like you are not thinking about anything, or you're not feeling an emotion of any sort that you can describe, is difficult for a lot of people. And so you simply observe your thoughts and allow them to float by and away out of sight. Now you don't want to attach to the thought, because your thought is like that branch that's broken off a tree, and you can see it floating on top of the river, and it's coming down towards you, and then it's floating on past. Now if you attach to the thought, if you try to push the thought away, if you try to figure out where the thought came from, if you do any interaction with that thought, that's sort of like jumping in the river with the branch, and now you are engulfed in it. You are no longer the observer. You're actually in the river, swimming around, trying to get back to the bank. And so by only observing our thoughts and emotions, we create this distance, and we can find peace and harmony. So what does it mean not to attach to your thoughts or your emotions? So don't judge them. They are not good or bad thoughts. They are not happy or sad thoughts. They are just thoughts. You can look at the contents of the thought, but don't judge them. Don't try to place any label to them. Don't identify with anger. If you happen to feel anger, if thoughts of your day go by and then anger swells up, and if you try to identify with that anger, and justify its existence, this is like, again, jumping into the water. And so remember, you're on the bank of the river. You're not in the river. All of the thoughts, we know this, any given thought, we don't necessarily know where they come from. Sometimes they're very shocking, but then they just disappear as well. And the same thing happens with our emotions. We can be in a conversation and then all of a sudden get very angry with somebody. And that, where did that anger come from? Well, we can stew in that anger and kind of come up with all kinds of justifications about why we're angry, but that is like latching onto it. So identifying the anger is not the same as identifying with it. So simply observing the anger and saying, oh, I'm getting angry. And then just letting it subside, because again, all our emotions, they don't last forever. They will subside. And so just let it float on by. Sometimes they float by very slowly. Other times they float by quite quickly, and something else enters your mind. And again, whatever enters your mind, just observe it, just watch it float by. That is the exercise in this meditation, and it helps us gain this distance. And through practice, we start to recognize the tricks of our mind, that certain things come up, certain thoughts come up, certain emotions get connected to them, and we can see how our mind connects various thoughts, emotions, and with past experiences. And so by doing this distance, we start to recognize the tricks of the mind. And so when in our daily lives, we start to recognize that our ego, our mind, our emotions are simply a function of our bodies, and that we can keep a distance, that we are able to act with compassion in any situation, there's no more suffering. There's only compassion for ourselves and others. When we don't label anything, when we don't give duality to anything, the only thing left is compassion. Compassion fills that space we create for ourselves when we distance ourselves from our thoughts, from our minds and our bodies. When we create space for ourselves, we distance ourselves from the mind and the body. Our spirit is able to express the only thing it is capable of, and that is love and compassion. And I believe that's what everybody is really after. It is our mind and body that is stifling our ability to express love and compassion. Mingyur Rinpoche is another person, and actually there's a crossover between some of the stuff I was talking about, where we're trying to meditate and things come up like pizza, and all of a sudden you're always going to think about pizza. These are some of the discussions and videos that I watched from Mingyur Rinpoche. And he's got a lot of videos that you can find online that help with meditation, and how to meditate with a noisy mind. And there's an interesting concept that I came across recently, and of course I think it needs to be discussed, and I have not experienced, or I should say, I have not explored it very much personally. I know there are people in Ek that follow and record their dreams, I believe. But again, I'm stepping out of my knowledge. I don't know much about Ek, but that's my understanding, is that's one of the things they do, is keep their sort of journal of their dreams. But I bring it up because in my experience, from simply what I've told you up till now, which is being able to separate from my body and my mind, acknowledge duality in life, understand what my ego is and my mind and my brain and how all that works. What happens when we're sleeping? When we are asleep, our minds continue to function while we are asleep. We know this, of course, because we have recollection of dreaming. But dreaming has been scientifically observed. And I think it's important to meditate before sleeping and as soon as you wake. And it's only been through my own practice for meditation that I have come to believe that, again, when I say meditate, there's all kinds of ways people are saying we should be meditating. But I want you to take a specific note, and that meditation, there's no written rule. There's lots of people will say it's supposed to be one way or another, but and we'll get to that. But meditation does not need to be structured, repetitive, and in a specific way. In fact, one of the reasons why I no longer follow Sadhguru and the Isha Foundation practices is because of that. They're far too practicey. They like to practice things and do specific things in a certain way, and it has to be just like that. And my intuition, if you will, says that that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem logical that the only way to enlightenment and the only way to experience an awakening and meditation is through having some sort of secret formula, secret handshake, if you will. And again, I go back to this whole thing about God. If God is everything and everything is God and we are gods ourselves, makes no sense. So I'm going to tell you that I believe meditation does not need to be structured. You do not need to sit in the lotus position. You do not need to be holding some sort of mudra. You do not need to follow a rigid practice at all. It's okay to fall asleep in bed while meditating, in fact, and you should actually do it regularly. I when I mean, I've tried the sitting lotus position. It's it's not good for my back. Um, I have a sore tailbone. There's all kinds of reasons that trying to sit still in a lotus position just is not conducive for obtaining what I believe meditation is about for me. Um, and so, again, I can't understand how I've been able to successfully consider my own enlightenment. And so I can tell you that in my case, the enlightenment I was looking for, I have achieved, and it did not take a rigid, structured approach to whatever is required for meditation. So I lie, I lie in bed, and in fact, there are some things that help get me into a relaxed state. And if you can imagine when you're sitting in the lotus position, bringing your heels as close as you can into your sternum. I do that while lying down. And for me, there's no pressure on my tailbone. My hips open, the circulation is very good, and I can obtain a peaceful meditative presence quite easily. And if I'm sitting up, I just can't. So for whatever it's worth, do what works for you. Try, if it's not working, and if part of it is you don't feel like sitting in a certain way or doing a certain thing is cutting it for you, then try something else. But I also do it pretty much only at night and when I first wake up. And I can tell you that I sleep very, very well as a result. I wake up refreshed. I wake up with a clear mind. I wake up in full acknowledgement of my body, which is odd, but I know in the past, waking up was something that was very difficult for me. And now it's far, far easier for me. When I wake up, I feel perfectly rested. My mind is clear. I can feel and acknowledge my body for what it is without a lot of pain and fuzziness that goes with it. It's hard to describe, I suppose, maybe. But one of the last things I do, I had started falling asleep, and I figured that's perfectly fine, because what better way to go into sleep than with a rested mind, with a mind that's cleared, separated from your, separated from your suffering. And in fact, after listening to Krishnamurti's various videos, he also has many videos examining the idea that we all unequivocally have the power and authenticity to actualize our higher selves, and that we do not need gurus. One guru's practice is another guru's disdain. And the funny thing is I had rebelled in that exact way and said, no, this isn't working for me. I'm going to do it this way. I feel comfortable, and I feel I'm getting where I want to be in my meditation by doing what works for me. And It was only after I was experiencing the benefits of my own practice, and also allowing things to drop away. Like, I used to do the mantra from Sadhguru when I was following him actively. I used to do it every day, and it did help me gain the insight and trust for the idea that I exist outside my mind and body, and that I can separate it and create distance. And I did experience the fact that when I created that distance, my ability for love and compassion grew exponentially. These are things that happened to me, and that's why I put them into this presentation. And I always found Krishnamurti very difficult to follow, and I don't think it was because of how he necessarily expresses himself. I think it was because of the way the editing happens in the videos that are on YouTube. There's a lot of, I mean, he is a very deep thinker, and his conceptualized ideas of actualizing our higher selves takes a lot of serious, concentrated thought, elimination, a lot of logic. It takes a lot of time to go through everything, reinforce the things that make sense, the logic that works, the reasons why logic doesn't hold in other cases, and so on. And so the videos that I had watched, I was one of the very first things I recognized was that I didn't like the way his videos were edited after the fact, because these are old videos of him talking at various lectures around the world. And so you only get little bits and pieces that they're trying to make consumable on the internet into shorts, so sometimes they're like a 3-minute thing. Well, his 3 minutes that they tried to come up with this concept on just has far too many hooks that were in previous conversations that obviously happened before the 3-minute video edit that you're not immersed in. So it took a while to go around and, I suppose, add up his position. And so even now there are some videos, and they're 20, 28 minutes long. They're much better at being able to place yourself into the context of the logical arguments. But again, there's I keep coming across this one where he talks about the monkey, and yet I have a idea about what they are talking about in terms of defining the monkey. I think it's almost self-evident, but at the level of scrutiny that Krishnamurti has over his choice of words and the arguments he has with his followers or attendees at these discussions, there, from what I've seen so far, I'll continue to watch, but there was never a defining period where they all agreed what the monkey was. It seemed evident that they all assumed we are the monkey, but then in their language of argument, they're mixing up the idea that they are the monkey, or they are ruled by the monkey, which is not the same thing. Okay, being ruled by the monkey, even though the monkey is in your head, gives the connotation that it's something outside of you. And so they get into this whole argument, oh, you just give yourself some space, and the monkey has space, and the monkey can go off and do what it wants. And so it's kind of an argument. There's some on the comments in those couple of videos where people are taking sides of this, that, or the other. And it's kind of sad, because I would rather just hear the conversation right from the beginning. So I'm going to keep looking, and hopefully I can find a video that provides the entire conversation so that I can put all the proper clauses and contexts into the arguments, because knowing the level of logic scrutiny that Krishnamurti does on his videos in his speaking, it's important. And so, yeah. But as I say, he adamantly describes the fact that we are all gods. We all have the ability to actualize our higher selves, and we do not need gurus. However, there are things that some gurus, and I don't consider myself a guru, but I can tell you what has worked for me. I can tell you why I believe it's working for me. I can tell you everything about what I'm doing that makes me feel better about actualizing my higher self. I can't say that it'll work for you, but I'm hoping for a conversation and a commitment, at least from some other human being, that says, you know what, I'm going to try that. Isn't that kind of gratifying to know that something that you did helped somebody else? And I think that's really what I'm after. And I think that's, obviously the motive of Krishnamurti going into expressing his ideas is he wants people to be able to actualize their higher selves as well. And he's trying to help people as best as he can. He's a human like everyone else. And so yeah, another one that is quite good at helping us sort of, because as I said at the beginning, language is our brain's way of communicating to others and communicating to ourselves. And actually, there was somebody I was just watching talked about the French language. He says, "Oh, I prefer English language. English language, you can have one word that describes a million different things, but you can also have one word that can only describe one thing." And he says, well, where in French is you can have a whole bunch of words and they describe one thing, but you need a whole bunch of other words in order to describe something else. And so, I mean, regardless of where we are in our language, which language we're using, it is a construct of the mind, and it has specific purposes. It has various connotations. And so using our language, understanding our language is a key, I think, to helping each other. And so we need to be as clear as we can. And again, I think that's why we're sort of limited on the ability to help each other without being in the same room, or at least talking live back and forth and having a conversation like he did in his videos. I think this is where we unleash some potential far better than simply listening to a recorded video. So let's try it on. I hope some of the things that I talked about here is at least worth you trying it. Everyone has a different mind. We've all experienced things completely different. It's an impossible thing, even for twins, to be the same person, because we all experience things different, and so our minds are different. We're all in a different place. So if you collect all of these things, these experiences and memories, and consider them putting us in a situation or place, then we're all in a different place. And so getting to that same place, that common place where we want to stop suffering, it's going to be unique for you as it is for me. Um, but when we simplify what suffering actually is, we can come up with some universal truths that tell me why the things that I have discovered work. And they tell me that they should work for others. If we can remove the labels, if we can remove the concept of past and future, if we can remove ourselves from our mind and bodies, then that suffering can stop. But the trick is to try something new if you haven't achieved success yet. Belief and hope. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. Beliefs begin where balance is lost. If we believe because we feel something is missing, that a future promise to fill the present void, or we will regain balance. So hope grows from that same soil, the quiet fear that what is not enough. And so we begin to label our experience in life and our life itself as one thing or another. And if you consider that your life has been a life of misery and suffering, and you believe that what's missing, that something is missing in order to relieve you of that, then you're going to create a belief in something outside yourself. You're going to create hope that something else will make everything back in balance again. But if we can get to a place where we are centered, where our mind and body and spirit are aligned, and we know who's in front and who's at the back of the line, then belief becomes unnecessary. When we understand the present is no longer a promise, that life is as it is and is whole, well, there's nothing to reach for because there's nothing absent. And so we need to look at, what are we suffering? Becoming overwhelmed by our thoughts, our emotions, our energy is the problem. And we are the source of our own suffering. If we place blame, we've labeled it. We've created duality. We've said it's them, not us. It's our thoughts. It's our emotions. It's our energy. And so we are the source of our own suffering. If you can live with that idea for a moment, let me get to the next slide, and I think you'll like it. Karma. Because it becomes the good news. If we continue to blame everything outside of us for our suffering, then it's everything outside of us that can only stop our suffering. And that leaves us hopeless, helpless. So it's actually good news. Being the source of our own suffering is good news in our karma. Only we can end our suffering. We cannot blame others, nor yourself. Nor yourself. You can't blame yourself either, because that is a judgment, that is labeling. We simply have to act in compassion and separate ourselves from the ego. That is the answer. And there's probably been, I should have looked this up earlier, but there's probably been many stories where, well, I guess if we look at the story of Jesus Christ, we can say that's exactly what's happened. He's acting in compassion, regardless of how we feel others have treated us, whether it's putting us up on the cross. He acted in compassion, and he did not consider his own suffering to be a problem. He removed himself from his suffering of the mind and the body, and he was acting in compassion on every foot. I mean, and that, in essence, makes us all God. Our ability to do what Jesus did, if you follow Jesus. I don't follow Jesus. Of course, I don't follow the Quran or any other of these religious books. And there's something that actually Alan Watts and a number of others have all said, is that when you look at the fundamental crux of all of these belief systems, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or any others, it's always about acting in compassion and love. So I want to thank you for listening. And if you wish to consider more concepts that enable you to become free of suffering, then consider joining the Quiet Circle, Listening with Mark, on patreon.com. I hope to be able to have conversations with anyone that would like to discuss these concepts, and you'll find on Patreon I have a number of posts that all hinge on the mind, body, and soul, the mind, body, and spirit. Thank you very much.